It is another socially distanced quarantine edition of Five Rings Canes here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I'm Alex Donno alongside Larry Blustein, as always. Blue, how are you? How has quarantine life been treating you?
Good. Doing good. But you and I were equipped for this, for the quarantine edition, because we kind of like do these distance things quite a bit. So we were ready for that. And me, I just put me in front of a computer with some video on it and watch some. I read all these people are talking about all these things that they're watching, and and you and I talked last week. I mean, I appreciate all the movies and the Netflix and everything that people are watching, but this is a time where you could sit there and just watch some really good video, and because I'm an optimistic guy, I'm thinking that this season I put out 2 blogs a day, 10 a week, talk about the season coming up, looking at some of the recruits, looking at the NFL draft. I'm an optimistic guy, Alex. So, I'm not going to, I'm sure I'm disappointed because me, I'm out, there's 24 hours in the day. I'm out 19 of them. So yep. It's been tough, but I put the mindset to it and say, you know what, this is what it's got to be. And if we're going to lead by example, because a lot of these kids will see me out and they'll think, well, Larry's out, I'm going to go out. And I don't want that because we'll never get rid of this.
True. Very true. Well, I'll tell you one person I don't think was built for quarantine life, and that's our special guest, good friend of ours, former Miami Hurricanes punter. This guy had a lot of success at the U and has a lot of great stories to tell, radio personality as well. Brian Monroe is with us. And Brian, I say you're not built for quarantine life because you, sir, are a social butterfly. Like, you are always my correspondent when it comes to what are the hot spots around town, what are the bars I should be checking out, where's the social scene. You're out of commission, my man, but how you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm out of commission. There ain't much to do, but I'm healthy, I'm safe. It's one of those things where we all have to adapt to this, and it's a scary time right now. We want everyone to be safe out there, and trust me, we all want sports here and now. We got the draft coming up to get take our mind off of what's going on in the world. But we all adjust, we adapted like Blue. You watch some film. You're able to study players for next year for the Canes and stuff like that, the new guys that have come in, so you actually get time to actually sit back and see exactly what the Canes are really getting, and then also study some of the other players that are coming back and be all prepared for when we get the season.
Hey Brian, I want to know if this derailed your spring and summer diet at all, because I know you were right on target for that swimsuit summer. Going on the boat, actually, doing all that.
It actually hasn't. It's easier actually for me right now because there's no FOMO, right? Because nothing's going on. There's no party I'm missing out on. There's no boat day I'm missing out on. So I've been pretty good on it. I've stayed to the diet. Instead of the last couple of weeks would have been 1 drink a week. I did that for 2 weeks, but now I've gotten on to like 1 day where I've enjoyed the day.
All right.
I love it. So guys, we've seen in recent weeks how the COVID-19 pandemic, it's obviously affected the NBA and the NHL. It's affected soccer that Brian and I are both really into. We've had seasons suspended, postponed, cancellations could be to come. And, we haven't really spent a whole lot of time, I think, as a society thinking about how this could affect the college and professional football seasons that are scheduled to start, around August, right? Now, one person who did bring it up within recent days was Kirk Herbstreit, who is, one of the more trusted, visible analysts in the business. He's got a huge platform, College Game Day on ESPN. And Herbstreit said something recently, guys, that he would be shocked if the college football season takes place as scheduled this coming fall. And listen, my personal take on it is, I'm not going to bash a man for his opinion, right? Like I'm not going to bash a guy for, I guess, seeing what's going on in the world, seeing people dying, seeing people quarantine, knowing that at this moment there's really no end in sight, right? So for Kirk Herbstreit, who's not a policymaker, like it's not like he's going to be the guy who makes the decision whether or not the college football season gets played, but I don't see any issue with the guy expressing his opinion. Now, some people didn't like his opinion. I know that there are a lot of head coaches out there that weren't happy about it. The Missouri coach bashed him. Brian Kelly, the head coach of Notre Dame, bashed him, basically saying, hey, he's not a scientist. We shouldn't listen to this guy. I'd love to hear your take, Blue. Like, do you have a problem with Herbstreit expressing his opinion? Because I can understand where he's coming from. That, yeah, August, September may feel like a long way away, and a lot of people are assuming, everything will be back to normal by then. But I really don't know. What do you think, Blue?
I just think it's his opinion, and obviously, he's given it some thought. I mean, if I told you that, hey, you know what, they're gonna postpone Olympics for a year, or
Right.
if they're gonna take, for the first time since wartime, take Wimbledon, one of the famed tennis tournaments, out of the mix, you would have said, oh no, they'll never do that. So anything's possible. I mean, and especially when you're having as many as 1,000 people die a day. I mean, so obviously it's an opinion that, has some base to it. I mean, because of the fact that where we're at now, if this pandemic was a rocket, we're still on the way up. We haven't leveled off. I mean, there hasn't been any cures. There hasn't been anything to fight it. So I respect that he made the opinion. I mean, I thought he would hold off at least until maybe June or so to maybe get a better read on it. But yeah, no, I have no problem with him making that, and that's his opinion.
What do you think, Brian, about what Herbstreit said, and also your opinion? Are you starting to get more and more pessimistic that the fall seasons are going to happen regularly?
I mean, it's not far-fetched to me that it doesn't happen or it doesn't start in a unique way, whether there's fans for the first month not in the stadium, because all we can do is look around what's going on in the world, right? Again, I'm not a medical expert, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but if you look at China, who tried to restart their basketball league, and I believe it's something like 4 months coming up that they've been off of their basketball league, and they weren't able to restart it even in select quarantine areas. What does that mean for college football and NFL when we haven't done the extreme measures of shutting everything down like they've done in China, where we've done like pockets here and there in the States? And then we've also had people like, oh, it's no big deal. It's not going to affect me. I'm still going to go to the beach with 100 people. I'm still going to go to, what is the story I read? 70 Texas students went to Mexico 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, for spring break. And 40 of them now have tested positive. It's like, we haven't taken the extreme measures. So like Blue said, we haven't leveled out. This thing's still going up for us right now. And if we look at that timeline of 4 months, we're already in April, right? So if we're looking already April, May, June, July, well, now we're teetering to say, okay, fall camp, practices, getting these guys together. Like, it's not far-fetched. I have hope that we're going to come up with faster tests so we're able to quarantine people or slow down the spread and level off this curve. But I can see where Herbstreit's coming from, because first of all, it's safety first, and you're talking about packing in 80,000 to 100,000 people into a stadium and say, yeah, we're all good, don't worry about it. Yeah. Nah, it's just not going to work right now.
Yeah, I mean, totally. At the end of the day, I think that people are upset about this just because they don't want to hear it and they don't like his opinion. And I get it, because listen, selfishly, I would be crushed if the college football season doesn't happen as scheduled in 2020. I mean, look at my perspective as a Hurricanes fan. I don't want to feel like we brought in De'Ara King for nothing, right? Like, you get a highly touted grad transfer quarterback, and if this season doesn't happen, who knows what they would do with eligibility for fall athletes, or, if he would even want to stay for the following years. So no, I don't want to waste or lose this upcoming season. I want it to happen. And on that note, want to give a lot of the journalists out there credit for still pumping out stories and keeping us entertained with content. I know that our guys at 5 Reasons Sports are really hustling. I came across something today on CanesWarning.com. Our buddy Alan Rubenstein does a great job there. He notes that Miami football, guys, is 15th in the odds to win the 2020 college football playoff. Now, I'm sure being in the ACC Coastal probably helps with their odds, but when you talk about a team that it's considered by Vegas, Blue, to be 15th most likely to win a championship this year, yeah, absolutely. I want to see the season happen as planned.
Yeah, no doubt. And you mentioned it. I mean, obviously De'Ara King would have been sitting out 2 years. So I would think that because the NCAA is letting all the spring athletes, and then it probably extend to the fall if that happens, an opportunity to come back for another year. And I think he would be one of them that would, because he's not he's not ready to go into the NFL. I mean, he would have been off for 2 years. So I think from that standpoint, and the other thing, like Brian brought it up, first of all, they're not just going to say all of a sudden on a Monday, okay, everything's cool. We'll pack a Florida Field or whatever stadium this week. What they're going to do is they're going to probably start it off with none or limited fans, probably none, just to get these games in. And if they extend, they may do away with the non-conference games, which in some circles, Florida State, you got to play that because that's a moneymaker. I mean, things like that. So, but see, everything to me is predicated on what happens tomorrow. And like Brian said, and we already established that this thing's still on the way up. I mean, we haven't even leveled off, and we're at the first week of April, and pretty soon you're going to be that 30 days is going to run out. And we're going to be in May, and they're going to look at it and say, "Wow, people are still dying, and nobody's listening, and they're going out, and they're spreading this virus even more." So yeah, I would say that what Herbstreit said and what others said, he's not a scientist, but he's only going off of what has transpired and the way that this country, I mean, we're probably as undisciplined as a country as you could be because we don't listen and nobody is enforcing it. And when your own governor said, we'll keep those beaches open. No, if you're going to shut the things down, you got to shut them down. People, and I don't have to tell you, there's always that that person is going to, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to, yeah, but you know what? But then when you do, what's going to happen? And then you spread it to your families and all that. Yeah, there's a whole lot to this. And that's the thing that drives you nuts. It's not just going to be one day they're going to wake up in July and go, okay, it's over. Baseball, go play. Soccer, resume your season. NBA. No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be staggered. It's going to be trial. And as I think, Brian, you related to in China, they try to restart the basketball season with no success. So, yeah, it's a hugely uphill climb.
So I wanted to go from the present and future guys to take a little walk down memory lane. We've been doing some of this in the last couple of episodes, talking about some of the great teams of old. And with Brian Monroe on the pod, I wanted to talk about a year that I hold this near and dear to my heart because it was my first year on campus at the U. I think it was Brian's first year on campus as well. This season didn't result in a championship, but it did have a stacked roster. So many first-round draft picks produced. It did result in a BCS bowl game victory in the Orange Bowl. It was the first year at Miami for Brock Berlin. Also the first year at Miami for Brian Monroe, correct? Was 2003. Was that your first year on the team?
Yeah, that's my freshman year.
How about that, man? So what was it like, getting to campus your freshman year? And you were a Canes guy. You'd follow the team. But getting into the locker room with some of those studs, like who were some of the guys that immediately either – I don't know if anybody intimidated you or anybody you could clearly see, I'm talking about like the DJ Williams and the Jonathan Vilmas of the world and the Frank Gores. You walk into that locker room, like who really stood out from a personality standpoint or a leadership standpoint?
So like personality-wise, you had DJ, but he was more of like the goofball, right? DJ was always a character, which I don't think anything has changed nowadays. It's still DJ. If you look at his Instagram, he's still wilding and crazy. Vilma was one of your vocal leaders with that team when it came to anything, meetings, locker room, practice. He was one of these, probably the face as far as the leader of many of those defense that he was on. Intimidation wise, I mean, it's always funny. Like everyone always talks about like, oh, which group of positions were like the meanest? Like, oh, was it this? Was it the defensive line? Was it this? And I'm like, honestly, it was the DBs. The DBs were like the baddest dudes. Like when it came to like when we have like a little fighting and stuff like that, the DBs were no joke. And obviously they were led by Sean Taylor because he was a freak. I mean, you're talking about a dude that was 6'3", 235 at sometimes. I mean, he could do it all and stuff like that. And Sean was a funny character. Sometimes he'd be very vocal and sometimes he'd be really quiet. And he would just walk by like nothing was going on. But when it came down to it, you talk about intimidating dude, that was a bad dude right there. And then I would also say Big Daddy, Vince Wilfork.
Wow.
Another big character guy.
Palm Beach County guy.
Palm Beach County, St. Lucia's High School, right?
Yep.
Big character guy, but also a very intimidating dude as well. If you just look at him, you're like, yo, how's this dude in college, man? He looks like a grown man. Like he looks like he's in his 30s right now. But yeah, going into that locker room was definitely different because you're talking about we had 6 first-round picks on that team.
Wow.
As far as that year alone in 2003. And then if you add the ones we had after that from my class to Antro Roll, Kelly Jennings, everybody else, it was just an eye-opener because you're looking at these dudes like, man, you're talking about the best of the best in college football right now, and you got freshmen coming with me like, oh, yeah, this guy's the number one in his position, this guy's the number one in his position, but you're 4th in the depth chart. You're 5th in the depth chart. Now go to work.
Yeah. Great linebacking core, too, with John Beeson was on there. And Vilma and Darryl McClover, who really, Darryl McClover was an extremely amazing football talent. I mean, he was really athletic. I mean, I still remember that team because a lot of guys that I covered in high school, like Alfonso Marshall and players like that. I mean, that defense was lights out. And I'm thinking, would they lose 2 games? Did you guys lose 2 games?
We lost 2 games, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that Tennessee game was crazy, though.
That was the one that, we had a team-only meeting, and you can only put yourself in the shoes where you were at compared to teams like nowadays. Or this past season, we heard they had a team-only meeting after they lost, I don't know, like 3 or 4 games or something like that. Well, we had a team-only meeting after we lost to Tennessee, and I believe we lost to Tennessee something like 16-10 or 16-13.
Yeah, no, it's like 10-6.
Yeah,
it was
10-6.
Like 10-6, like a 4-point game, and because Miami had opportunities. And they kept, they were all the way down there, and it just seemed like you guys were. It was like a 12 noon game, and it kind of was.
Yes.
Like, it was like out of sync. It just seemed like the game was out of sync.
Yeah, and then we had that team only meeting, and I was like, oh wow, this ain't no joke. And it's one of those things where you got the defense our defense was absolutely disgustingly loaded, and you're talking about a new quarterback in Brock Lynn, who has only been there for a year as a scout team guy and hasn't played and stuff like that. And they're used to Dorsey coming in there and leading down the charge. And, at one point it was kind of like the locker room was divided after that game a little bit because the defense felt like they did depart, but the offense didn't step up. And, I think we needed to keep – one of the big problems is we needed to keep Brock in the shotgun the whole time. Yep. Brock thrived in the shotgun. If Brock played right now, man, Brock would throw it all over the field. I mean, we saw my first game ever in the OB at night was that Florida comeback. And we know exactly what Brock did in the second half of that game when they put him in the shotgun. So I think that was one of the issues, figuring out what Brock Berlin did the best. And then we finally hit a nice little smooth patch and got to the Orange Bowl and beat Florida State.
Yeah, so on that note, like you talked about the Tennessee loss triggered the players only meeting. That was actually Miami's second loss in consecutive weeks that year. You'd lost to Virginia Tech on the road, and just one of those games at Lane Stadium where just some nights you step in there and just Murphy's Law, everything goes wrong, right? And so after you lose those 2 straight games, you mentioned you hit a smooth patch after that. Miami went on to win their Final 4, including the Orange Bowl. It was a 10-win season. You beat Florida State in the OB game. So, I'm guessing, Brian, you would say the players-only meeting worked, right? And maybe did you see some of those divisions in the locker room? Did fences get mended after that?
Yeah, winning cures everything, obviously, when it comes to sports. But, yeah, I think once you get everything off your chest and now you understand where the person across from you is coming from, it's a different, feel and vibe as far as understanding the man, right? Because what people don't really understand is that offense and defense sometimes are separate as far as hanging out, as far as practice and everything else. Like, there's an offensive bus, there's a defensive bus. We have offensive meetings, defensive meetings. So, like, they're kind of separate in some entities, but you need to understand what the offensive mind's going through because, we got fights in practice and everything else like that. But it takes that, get everything off your chest. Why am I pissed at you? Why are you pissed at me? Okay, let's do this differently. Okay, let's have your back the whole 9 yards to move forward.
All right. I'll tell you, Brian, probably the most exciting game in that year was that Thursday night West Virginia game. When
That game crazy.
Kellen Winslow caught a ball that, I mean, I don't think anybody else could have caught. I mean, because it was almost way over his head, and he came down with it, I believe, on fourth down, and
it was like 4th and 12, Blue. Something
4th
like
and 14 or something. He came up with that ball was really overthrown. Anybody else wouldn't even come close. He made, I thought, the catch of the year. That game was as strange as you could on a Thursday night. Again, it was one of those out of flow games. I think that was a year Miami had so much talent, but games like those noon games, a Thursday night game, kind of like acted a little bit strange. And it was. West Virginia was not that good that year, and you guys kept them in the game. And I still remember that catch was an amazing catch on a Thursday night that is somewhat like Ed Reed's play against Boston College that year. That kept the title hopes alive. Just strange type of play that kind of kept Miami in things, and they took advantage. Yeah, that was a crazy year. That was, I mean, down to the Florida State win in the Orange Bowl, where I think Miami was deeply disappointed because they felt that they should have been playing maybe for a national title. Was the Virginia Tech loss, and then obviously the loss to Tennessee that kept that. But Miami had as much talent as any team, and it proved it in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean, think about all the first rounders that year. It was just absolutely sick.
Amazing.
So something, Brian, that I'm curious about. If you can remember, like, the feelings you had and the feelings some of your teammates had when that season concluded, because the standards were different then, right? In 2003, Miami was coming off of 2 straight national championship appearances. Should have been 2 straight national titles, but the Ohio State game was just a highway robbery in the Fiesta Bowl. And so, the standards were like, this team just doesn't lose games, and they especially don't lose at home the way that they did in the Tennessee game. So I can even remember how spoiled I was as a fan back then, like feeling unsatisfied after that season was over. I mean, you tell a Canes fan today, I'm going to give you 10 victories and an Orange Bowl win, you're probably signing up for that pretty quickly unless you're really delusional. But coming off of that 03 season, was there like a general feeling of mission accomplished, job well done, or was there a lot of disappointment that it wasn't a national title?
Being a freshman, I didn't really understand, right? First time playing, 10 wins. Oh, we got to the Orange Bowl, BCS, I guess we're having a good season, or at least we got to the BCS. But there was a lot of disappointment in the locker room because I think the only reason why it was more of a hype bowl game for us is because we played Florida State and it was a rival. Probably if we played anybody else, it wouldn't have been as hyped as the guys in the locker room wanted, because they were very disappointed in it go to a 3rd national championship.
Sure.
So it was a disappointing season, I would say, to guys that had been in that locker room prior to just the first year.
That's amazing. I mean, that was a great year. That was.
Yeah. Well, I certainly, we can't have a conversation about 2003 without talking about what happened on September 6th of that year, 38-33, the comeback against the Florida Gators. I mean, that was your introduction to home game at the Orange Bowl, being on the team. Just describe what that was like, and did you doubt at any point midway through the 3rd quarter when you're down 20 that Miami's going to come back and win that game?
Yeah, that game was nuts. I mean, being a true freshman, first game in the OB, it happened to be against Florida at night, extra bleachers. And I remember Devin Hester saying, I'm going to take Devin to kickoff back. I'm just going to take Devin to kickoff back. I'm like, okay, Devin, yeah, you do that, Devin. We're going to see that. And then sure enough, he does it. And the place goes absolutely berserk. And, they have their run. And, we go into halftime. We have our leader step up, give the speeches. We know the adjustments we need to do. I think we all had faith because you just look at the guys you had in our locker room and you just knew they had the ability to come back. I mean, our defense alone could get you back in this game. Again, I think it was second game with Brock Berlin, just understanding what he does well, what he doesn't do well, and they put him in the shotgun and they flourished. I don't think anybody was doubting that we would come back in that game, but when we did, I mean, that was one of the most electric and best atmospheres I've ever been involved in when it came to college football.
And, I remember that year for, like you had said, with some of the talent that they had. I mean, I talked to some of the guys, from that year, like Roscoe Parrish and Frank Gore and Devin Hester. I mean, just amazing players that Miami hadn't been getting over the last decade or so. But now, if we can, talk about what's going on. And you and I talked about this last year, Brian, almost every week after every game. Before, Alex talked about the Eric King and bringing in some of these playmakers. Talk about that, because I think that Miami probably added more players this year that are reminiscent to the past than they have in at least the last decade, as far as an amount of players, not just one like a Duke Johnson here and there, but they added a lot of good-looking kids in the recruiting class and the transfer portal. Talk about that, how this kind of maybe will set the tone for the future for this program to get back to where it was.
I think the recruiting landscape has completely changed, obviously, with technology, right? Back in the day when we were getting recruited, it was, hey, how many letters can you get? Can you fill up shoe boxes? And you get your phone call at your parents' landline and stuff like that. Nowadays, everything's Twitter and text messages and face calling, everything else like that. And now these kids have 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers coming into schools, and all they really want is, who's the one going to show me the most love? That's the one I'm going to go to. I think, it's a harder time for a coach to recruit. There are select recruits, I believe, that are going to go to certain schools just because they love that school growing up and stuff like that. But I think as far as Miami and what's changed is they haven't been winning, right? Kids nowadays, they don't remember 2003. They don't remember 2002, no. 2001. I mean, some of these kids were what? Babies? Not even born yet sometimes? Like, yeah. They just don't remember them now. They're going to remember the Ed Reeds because Ed played for a long time and just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. You're going to remember the Sean Taylors because of the name, the Ray Lewis's because of the name. But if Miami wants to get back to consistently keeping Miami teams here, they have to win first and foremost, because you look at some of these schools that have done a great job plucking from Miami in most recent years. And what I can think of off the top of my head, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, as far as plucking some of the biggest names from South Florida. Right. I mean, Alabama went on a run where they took, the best receiver for Miami and Dade for like 2 out of the 3 years, 3 out of the 4 years. Ohio State got the Bosa brothers and locked down St. Thomas Aquinas. Georgia was able to get Tyson Campbell and some other guys. And, just being around some of the young dudes, when I run into some of them as far as on their official visits and stuff like that, you ask them to just simply, what are you looking for in a school? Because I honestly don't care if you come to Miami or not. I want someone that wants to be at Miami. I want someone that wants to bleed orange and green at Miami. So I want to know why you're picking a school. And, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, well, I want to go to the NFL. This coach can get me to the NFL. Okay, cool. Well, we produce, I don't know, the 3rd most, 4th most to be in the NFL, and we've been down. And then there's always that one they say, well, I want to win and I want to compete for championships. And in their lifetime, as much as we know the glory days, they have not seen Miami as that glory team. They've seen 1 year in 2017 that we rose up to number 2 and then all of a sudden downhill. But other than that, they haven't seen any championship competition level playing. They haven't seen competing for ACC championships. If we want to get the guys that we need, which I'm with you, Blue, I feel like this class has a lot more leaders that are going to lead instead of just talk. We have to get back to a winning basis first, because those kids want to say, if I go to Miami, I know I'm going to compete with Clemson in the ACC championship game to go to the playoffs.
True. Well said. And to all the high school kids listening, you're quarantined, you don't have anything else to do. Make sure you go to, I don't know if they're on Netflix still. I would assume they are, but pull up Billy Corbin's You and You Part 2 documentary. Yes. The You and the You Part 2.
That'll get you.
Yeah, so if there are any of the 16, 17-year-olds listening, you haven't signed your national letter of intent yet, you're looking for a verbal commit, talk to us after you watch the You and the You Part 2, and maybe we can make some gains out there.
Well, I think I still think that's a unique part that Miami holds that a lot of schools can't hold and they can't do, because they don't have the fraternity that the University of Miami has. Like, you still, if you go as a recruit to Miami, can talk to any of the greats that have come through that door, and in any given practice, there might be 3 first-rounders out there. There might be a Hall of Famer out there. There might be 5 guys working out in the gym just working out because we all still live down here, and you're able to pick the brains of those greats. You're able to ask them questions about anything they want. You see E. Reed's got his job now with Chief of Staff, and I think it's greatly going to help recruiting in certain aspects as far as what it takes to be a Hurricane, dedication, motivation. Ask me anything you want to know as a parent. I will let you know how it goes. How am I going to help your young man become a pro or a Hall of Famer? And if he's not the type of guy that I think needs to be at the U, I'll tell you bluntly that he's not the one, because he's not going to work hard. He's not going to dedicate, and he's not going to sacrifice, because it's not easy to get to where those guys got to. You know, people think, oh, I got God's given ability, I'm going to be a Hall of Famer. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. The best players that I've been around, and I've been around some of the greats to ever do it, they were the hardest working dudes I've ever been around. Get up early, do extra sprints after practice, at nighttime, extra workouts. In the offseason, we were doing 2 and 3 a days just by ourselves, them leading the meetings and the practices. And then also, we all know the stories, you know, we've heard them now from Clint Portis about Sean Taylor when he was the Redskins and him running from practice. Well, he did that to UM at Miami. In the middle of the night, Sean would just go running. He would just go run around the campus. And I remember one time hearing in a conversation, and he was like, yo, there's a safety in Oklahoma. He's sleeping right now. I'm working. I'm like, damn. Yeah, this is what greatness is right here.
And you look at the work ethic. Look at Frank Gore. I mean, somebody. You know, I mean, this is somebody who's still ticking, and he's your age, right?
I mean, Frank's 1 year older than me, but Frank, to me, if you ask any of the running backs, obviously I didn't play running back, but if you ask any of the running backs that came out of Miami who was the best to do it, they all say Frank. And what people don't realize, Frank, if he never got injured, you're talking about we will never hear of Willis McGahee.
Yeah, true.
Right? And then Frank also might have gone first round instead of third round to the 49ers. Like, Frank is the dude that he ain't going to say much. If he don't know you, he ain't going to say much. But he's going to put his head down, and he's going to work. And you see Frank, to this day, he came out, 2006 class, 2005 class?
2005, I think. Yeah.
2005, and he's still in the league at a high level. And I remember we ran into Frank, I don't know, it was probably like 3 years ago. And I remember him saying, like, it was me and John Beeson. He was like, Beeson, I don't think you understand, man. These dudes right now, they soft in the league, man. They don't want no contact. I'm just running these young boys over. And I'm like, see, this is Frank. His work ethic is through the roof, and he's still running 22, 23, 24-year-old dudes over in the league. And he's well in his 30s.
Yeah. And Edge, who just went into the Hall of Fame this year. So it kind of keeps that candle burning. So, you know, Manny and them have at least something to build on, that you have a Frank Gore who's still playing. You have an Edgerrin James who freshly minted into the Hall of Fame as guys that, hey, listen, if you work hard, that's where you could be.
I mean, you know this young man better than me because you watched the high school level, but I got to watch one practice, and the young kid, Jalen Knighton. Just watching him from that one practice, I said, this is a kid that's going to thrive in a spread offense because he's got that burst that I don't think we have in our running backs room. Now, I didn't get to see Don Chaney because he's hurt, but as far as running backs that are coming back, you know, I love Cam Harris, but he's more of a one cut, I'm going to try to run you over. Jalen Knighton made a play where he was going to the right, saw the hole, bounced it outside, and took off. And I was like, well, damn, that's what we need right there. That's a kid that can take the ball 80 yards at any time. So I'm really looking forward to see his development and see what he does in camp.
Well, I agree. Guys, I really appreciate the memories and the reflection, you know, whether it be talking about the crappy current state of events in the world or reliving better times. It's always a good time. Brian Monroe, can't thank you enough, man. And let the people know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, no problem, man. I had a great time. Twitter, it's B_Monroe15. And then my Instagram is B Monroe15.
And
Good
Blue,
stuff. Next time we'll talk about Brian's career as a wide receiver too. So.
There you
Yes.
go. You know what I'm saying? Tell you about all those DBs I dusted in practice.
Oh man, you can
Good
always
stuff,
follow.
Brian.
Go ahead.
No, I said good stuff, Brian.
Good stuff, man. And you
Yeah.
can follow Blue at Larry Blustein. Follow me at Alex Donno on Twitter. We'll talk to you guys next time on Five Rings Canes on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.